Christianity, Mission Impossible. Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's poppin'? Happy Monday to everyone. Happy President's Day. Hopefully you got the day off, so that we all can just hang out and get into some good Bible stuff. Now, of course, I got to speak to the party people in the chat. We got my man JP on the check-in. What's going on, sir? One of the most humorous believers you're ever going to come across. Good dude. Very solid. We got Adrian Jones on the check-in. Of course, we have the real American Mr. Phil Fox. You know what I mean? Always here representing. Definitely appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you have not already, please like, share, and subscribe. Please share the link. Tell a friend that it's him again. And if you like and appreciate the things that have been presented over the past few months or years since I've been doing the YouTube thing, please show your support via PayPal. And if you'd like to be a monthly supporter of the BK Apologist, you could become a Patreon where you get an assortment of goodies that will enhance your personal Bible study. So, yes. So I hope everybody's doing well. And yes, please definitely share the link. Actually, you could also hit me on Instagram. Okay. And I also make t-shirts with an urban apologetic theme to them. So that's the link. That's also in the chat as well. So you want to check that out. I got a couple of Black History t-shirts that you might find interesting. I even made a Juneteenth one just to get everybody ready. You know what I mean? It's like, I know it's not June yet, but hey, get yourself ready so that you're ready to go for that momentous occasion. So today, now usually, what I like to do is debunk or answer certain things that people like to throw or accuse Christians and Christianity about, right? And but every once in a while, I like to take time out and just really encourage the saints, because at the end of the day, it's really important to, hey, Celeste, good afternoon from Flatbush. Yes, I purchased your Proverbs 31. Thank you. That's great. You know what I mean? Says you got that Ishtar long sleeve too. This guy's hilarious. So, the reason why I do what I do, well, one, I actually do enjoy it. But, I want believers to feel comfortable in the decision they've made to make Jesus Lord. And there's a lot of people out here, there's a lot of channels who like to disrupt and make you question or doubt, whether or not you've made the right decision when you made Jesus Lord. And I just want to take time out to share with you guys that, yes, you've made the right decision to make Jesus Lord. And I just want to take time out to encourage the saints today about that. And the way I'm going to go about doing it today is to show how actually you shouldn't be encouraged, right? Because it shouldn't have worked. Christianity should have never stuck around as long as it has. It should have never been as effective, right? So clearly there's some divine providence behind, your decision to make Jesus Lord. And I'm just going to go through some various reasons why Christianity is impossible for it to work, but yet it works anyway. All right? So with that being said, share my screen. We got Servant of Christ Ministries in the building. What's going on, sir? All right. One of the biggest problems Christianity actually has is the crucifixion. Christianity should have never gotten off the ground because of the crucifixion. Why do I say that? Well, right, in 1 Corinthians 1:18 says, "For the preaching of the cross to them that perish is foolishness, but unto us which are saved it is the power of God." In his book, Crucifixion by Martin Hengel, he says, "Crucifixion was an utterly offensive affair, obscene in the original sense of the word. Right? This is it's like a dirty thing to be put on the cross. It's abhorrent. It's terrible. Nobody wants to deal with this. Okay. He goes on and says, crucifixion was a widespread and frequent above all in Roman times, but the cultured literary world wanted to have nothing to do with it, and as a rule kept quiet about it. Right? That's how disgusting the crucifixion was. That people who wrote about history tend to kind of fast forward that part. They kind of censor that part because it was just too gruesome. But yet, as believers, the epicenter of our faith is this. It's the cross. This obscene and disgusting, torturous device. In Social Science Commentary on the Gospel of John by Bruce Molina and Richard Raubaugh, it says here, crucifixion was a status degradation ritual designed to humiliate in every way, including the symbolic of hands and legs signifying a loss of power and loss of ability to control the body in various ways, including befouling oneself with excrement. Right? It's a degradation ritual. It is the ultimate embarrassment that someone can go through. Right? It wasn't just the pain, but the embarrassment and how it lowered your social status in front of everyone. Right? It was that bad. You know what I mean? So here the drawing scaved crudely into soft plaster shows a male person worshiping a figure on a cross. Only the figure's wearing has the head of a donkey. There is an inscription in Greek which translates roughly to Alekmenos worships his God, or Alekmenos worships God. There are several variations of the translation. The originator of the graffiti manages to mock both Jesus and Alekmenos at the same time. In fact, it is argued that this is the first depiction of Jesus on a cross. And the first depiction is that of mocking him. Because you mock people who are on a cross. And you definitely going to mock someone who worships a God on a cross. What God will allow himself to be put through such a abhorrent, torturous procedure as a crucifixion? It makes no sense, right? And this person felt that way enough to make fun of this particular person worshiping Jesus, a God that is on a cross. This is from Honor, Patronage, Kingship, and Purity, Unlocking New Testament Culture by David De Silva. It says, no member of the Jewish community or the Greco-Roman society would have come to faith or joined the Christian movement without first accepting that God's perspective on what kind of behavior merits honor differs exceedingly from the perspective of human beings, since the message about Jesus is that both the Jewish and Gentile leaders of Jerusalem elevated Jesus, his convictions and his deeds as meriting a shameful death. But God overturned their evaluation of Jesus by raising him from the dead and seating him at God's own right hand as Lord. Right? Both communities deemed crucifixion as a degradation ritual. That it was the epitome of shame. But it's that very shame that God turns on its head and uses this as a means of salvation. To remove everyone's shame if you accept the gift of grace. But it's done via this very torturous, shameful degradation ritual. Right? It just upends it and usurps this torturous thing and makes it into a moment of salvation for all if you accept. Right? It should have never have worked. It should have never have worked. What's going on? Brother Brian's in the place. Tyler Lott. What's going on, y'all? Roger Sherman II. Yes, I see you guys. Let's continue. In The Resurrection of the Son of God, written by N.T. Wright, it says, Jewish beliefs about a coming Messiah and about the deeds such a figure would be expected to accomplish came in various shapes and sizes. But they did not include a shameful death, which left the Roman Empire celebrating its usual victory. Right? This is not how they figured the Mashiach will come. They're expecting someone like from Judges. This superhero master commanding an army and destroying our enemies and bringing back Israel to its heyday. Right? That they did not expect for the King of Kings to be put on a cross. This didn't make any sense to him at that time. Another reason why Christianity should have never really worked out the way it did is location. Location, location, location. John 1 verse 46. And Nathanael said unto him, Can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? Right? And this is from The Impossible Faith, A Defense of the Resurrection. Jesus' Jewishness could hardly have been denied by the early Christians, but it was also a major impediment to spreading the gospel beyond the Jews themselves. Judaism was regarded by the Romans and Gentiles as a superstition. Roman writers like Tacitus willingly reported, not as true, but in the frame of some say, all manner of calumnies against Jews as a whole, regarding them as a spiteful and hateful race. Those who adhered to the superstitio therefore found themselves, as a matter of course, associated with bizarre and extreme behaviors, as the Christians did, and as Tacitus also reports of the Jews in his histories, and then went further, quote, because superstition leads to irrational ideas about the gods, the inevitable consequence is atheism. So Tacitus is saying that because the Jews were basically, and the Christians, because the first Christians were Jews, right, that they're superstitious about Christ, about the Messiah, it leads to irrational ideas and atheism. So the Christians were called atheists in the Greco-Roman world, right? Since superstitions bucked the established cosmic order, their view of the universe was regarded as capricious and irrational, and this eventually led to the charge by critics like Christians that Christians were actually atheists, right? Because what they believed didn't gel with the various pantheons that the Greco-Roman Empire was familiar with. Well, then you guys don't believe in God, because you don't believe in our God. You believe in some weird superstition, all right? Christianity had a serious handicap in this regard. The stigma of a savior who undeniably hailed from Galilee, for the Romans and Gentiles, not only a Jewish land, but a hotbed of political sedition. For the Jews, not as bad as Samaria, of course, but a land of yokels and farmers without much respect for the Torah, and worst of all, a savior from a puny village of no account. Right? If you're going to be somebody during this time, you're not going to come from this part of the world. This is not a good send-off to a legendary career, right? Being in some backwater town, with the hicks and yokels. If you're really trying to be something, you wouldn't start it here. Again, it doesn't make any sense. Okay? Another impediment to Christianity that makes it impossible is the resurrection. It may further be noted that the pagan world was awash with points of view associated with those who thought matter was evil, and at the root of all man's problems, Platonic thought, as Murray Harris puts it, supposed that, quote, men's highest good consisted of emancipation from corporal defilement. The nakedness of disembodiment was the ideal state. Physical resurrection was the last sort of end game for mankind that you wanted to preach. Like, this wasn't the trendy philosophy of the time. During that time, flesh meant nothing. It was all about spirit. So this idea of someone dying, coming back physically, it didn't jive well with the trendy philosophy of that time. Because you're trying to get rid of the flesh. Why would somebody come back in the flesh when the flesh, according to their view, was evil to begin with? So when these Christians were talking about the risen Lord, and they meant risen in the sense that he physically reappeared, it goes against, and it was actually a polemic against the philosophy during that day and time. You know what I mean? What's up to Michelle? We got Alejandro in the building. We got the incomparable Nate2D2, Jay Parker. What's going on? What's going on, guys? I'd like to see you guys falling in. That's what's up. Back to N.T. Wright. He says the resurrection of the Son of God quotes Homer's King Priam. Quote, lamenting for your dead son will do no good at all. You will be dead before you bring him back to life. Meaning that this can't happen. This resurrection thing, you'll be dead before you could even do it. Right? It's just not logical. It doesn't make any sense. And Asius Eminides is quoted as saying, once a man has died and the dust has soaked up his blood, there is no resurrection. Right? It didn't jibe with their philosophy. It wasn't logical. It wasn't reasonable. It's not going to happen. But what's the gospel? Jesus died and came back in the physical form. Right? It's the worst message to put out at this time. It's antithetical to whatever people believed in the Greco-Roman Empire. This is not the time to introduce this type of teaching. And the reason for that, because it was considered a new teaching, right? Anything new wasn't held in high regard during this time. Roman literature tells us that the primary test of truth in religious matters was custom and tradition. The practices of the ancients. In other words, if your belief had the right sort of background and a decent lineage, you had the respect of the Romans. Old was good, innovation was bad. Okay? Millennia and Naire explained the matter further. Reverence was given to ancestors who were considered greater by the fact of birth. Romans were culturally constrained to attempt the impossible task of living up to the traditions of those necessarily greater personages of their shared past. What had been handed down was presumed valid and normative. Forceful arguments might be phrased as, we have always done it this way. Quote, always, everywhere, by everyone. In contrast, Christianity said, not now, not here, and not you. Right? It introduced, in their world, innovation. Right? This thing about, dying on a cross, which is terrible and harmful. But this is the source of our salvation. The fact that he comes back bodily is something that everybody poo-pooed on in the Roman society. Like, get rid of your flesh. Why are you coming back in the flesh for? Like, all this doesn't make sense. And the reason why it doesn't make sense, because this is, to their ears, was new. This is a new teaching. Right? So if it's new, it's not good. If our forefathers and our fathers before them, if they didn't do it, we shouldn't do it either. Right? That was the thought pattern at that time. Another reason why Christianity should have never have worked is behavior. Okay? This is not one of the greatest barriers, but it is a significant one, and of course still is today. Ethically, Christian religion is hard to do. Judaism was as well. But that is one reason why there were so few God-fearers. Christianity then offered nice drunken parties or orgies with temple prostitutes. In fact, it forbade them. Right? You couldn't get lit and be a believer. You just couldn't do it. This was a problem in the ancient world as much as it is now, if not more so. It would not appeal to the rich, who would be directed to share their wealth. The poor might like that, but not if they couldn't spend their shared dough on their favorite vice distraction. Not all of which were known to be self-harming and therefore offered an ulterior motivation for giving them up. Again, this is not an insurmountable hurdle. Some Romans were attracted to the ethical system of Judaism and would have been likewise attracted to Christianity. Right? A lot of these religions are fertility cults. Right? And in order to excite the gods, you would have these, these sex-inspired rituals to entice the god to basically have sex with the planet so that we can have a great harvest, right? Which makes sense that man would make such a religion. Like that's a man religion. I can have as much sex as possible, and it's gonna help me in my agriculture later on. you know, that's when people say man-made religion, that's a man-made religion. The idea of being pure and treating women who are not your wife as a sister, that was foreign. Treating women with respect was foreign. You know, not getting drunk was foreign, right? But for those who appreciate clean living, then yeah, they will be attracted to it. But from a commercial aspect, it should never have become popular because it actually went against the things that were popular at the time when it came to worship, right? Yes, Nate. I said poo poo. I hope you're happy about that. Apologies in Detroit was good. Let's get Biblicals in the building. What's going on, sir? Another issue and why Christianity should have never been successful is history. The New Testament is filled with claims of connections to and reports of incidents involving famous people. Here's how one of our readers put it. Herod Agrippa. This man was a client king for the Romans over the area surrounding Jerusalem, was eaten of worms, as Luke reported in Acts 12:20-23. Copies of Acts circulated in the area and were accessible to the public. Had Luke reported falsely, Christianity would have been dismissed as a fraud and would not have caught on as a religion. If Luke lied in his reports, Luke probably would have been jailed and or executed by Agrippa's son, Herod Agrippa II, who held the same position, because that was the fellow Paul testified to in Acts 25-26. Right? So Luke is showing historical events. And if he made this up, not only would it have been found out, there could have been some criminal charges pressed on him. Right? But the gospel is embedded within actual history. A lot of other religions and beliefs sounds very much like Star Wars, right? A long, long time ago in the galaxy far, far away. A lot of belief systems are like that. But not Christianity. Christianity is very much in human history. The New Testament claims countless touch points that could go under this list. An earthquake, a darkness at midday, the temple curtain torn in two, an execution, all at Passover, with the attended crowds numbering in the millions. People falling out of a house speaking in tongues at Pentecost. Another, quote, millions attend event. All in a small city and culture where word would have spread fast. Healings of illnesses and dysfunctions, even reversals of death in highly public places. A triumphal entry into Jerusalem and blatant fulfillment of messianic prophecy. In short, Christianity was highly vulnerable to inspection and disproof of innumerable points, any one of which, had it failed to prove out, would have snowballed into further doubt, especially given the previous factors above, which would have been motive enough for any Jew or Gentile to say or do something. This is not the way to start a religion. You start a religion by linking to obscure and nameless people, right? You don't put yourself out there to be fact-checked unless you are stating facts, right? Because, and we see people get debunked all the time on the internet. It happens on my channel, right? We fact check to see if what people are saying or doing is actually true. Well, we're not the first ones that did that, right? People at that time would look at these written gospels and they would try to see if they could debunk them. But they couldn't. Why? Because it was actual facts. These things really occurred. And if they didn't, it would have got shut down from then, and Christianity would have came to a screeching halt. Or it would have been marginalized to just another fairy tale. But 2,000 years later, that is definitely not the case. You don't talk of a synagogue ruler or a Sanhedrin member or even a centurion being in your history, even if you don't name them, there are a few enough of each of these that it would not be hard to make a check. You stick with no names, like the woman at the well. Such persons, of course, would have had to be interacted with anyway, but the point is not their presence, but the presence of those of greater social standing and notice, and the claims attached to them. It is impossible that Christianity thrived and survived without having its ducks in a row in this regard. Yeah, this this gets you blocked on the internet, pretty much. So another issue that Christianity would have, what should have prevented Christianity from flourishing, as it did, is social status. Molina and Nere note that in the ancient world, people took their major identity from their various groups to which they belonged. Whatever group they were embedded in determined their identity. Changes in persons, such as Paul's conversion, were abnormal. Each person had certain role expectations they were expected to fulfill. The erasure or blurring of these various distinctions, stated clearly in Paul, but also done in practice by Jesus during his ministry, would have made Christianity seem radical and offensive. Right? You had your social hierarchy. You had the haves and the have-nots. You had the royalty and you had the plebs. You had, you know what I mean? It's like everybody had their little place where they fit in. But in Christianity, your identity changes. Or should I say your identity is restored. Right? Because we are all created in the Imago Dei, in the image of God. But that's a switch up. Right? A commoner in the Greco-Roman world did not perceive himself as the imager of God. Only those of the elites would deem themselves. A Caesar is a son of God. Not the man that cleans Caesar's sandals. But in the gospel, you become a imager of God. Your identity gets changed. You're no longer just, a farmer or a tax person or a centurion. You're no longer just those things. You're now a imager and fellow son or daughter of God. You don't get to change. That's a major shift in your identity, right? And you didn't get to do that within this society. So again, this was new. This is strange. This bucks against the very cultural hierarchy that existed during that time. The group identity factor makes for another proof of Christianity's authenticity. In a group-oriented society, you took your identity from your group leader, and people needed the support and endorsement of others to support their identity. Christianity forced a severing of social and religious ties. The things which made an aged person human in standing, it did provide its own community support in return, but that hardly explains why people joined in the first place. Right? Let me stop there for a minute. Right? It disrupts the social hierarchy at its time. In fact, Christianity as a whole was very disruptive. Right? It made you change the way you perceived God. It changed the way you perceived yourself. Your Lord isn't Caesar anymore. It's Yeshua. Right? It's very seditious and very disruptive religion. Right? At this point, if someone became a Christian, you was radicalized. You was strange. You was a weirdo. Right? And to a certain extent, we still are weirdos, right? But back then, it was glaring. It was glaring, right? Another issue Christianity should have stopped Christianity, is women. If Christianity wanted to succeed, it should never have admitted that women were the first to discover the empty tomb or the first to see the risen Christ. It also never should have admitted that women were main supporters, Luke 8:3, or led converts, Acts 16. Many have pointed out that women were regarded as, quote, bad witnesses in the ancient world. We need to emphasize that this was not a peculiarity as it would be seen today, but an ingrained stereotype. As Bellini and Nere note, gender in antiquity came laden with elaborate stereotypes of what was appropriate male or female behavior. Quintilian said where murder was concerned, males are more likely to commit robbery, while females were prone to poisoning. We find such sentiments absurd and politically incorrect today, but whether they are or not, this was ingrained indelibly in the ancient mind. In general, Greek and Roman courts excluded as witnesses women, slaves, and children. According to Josephus, women are unacceptable because of the levity and temerity of their sex. Women were so untrustworthy that they were not even allowed to be witnesses to the rising of the moon as a sign of the beginning of festivals. So we couldn't even believe a woman when she saw the moon. That's crazy. Right? But yet, they saw the actual Son of God, though. And they're the first to be witnesses to that. So again, it's crazy. You're doing it wrong. You're doing religion wrong in the first century in Greco-Roman time if this is how you're getting down. You're doing it way wrong. All right? So, yes. Woohoo, women. Oh, man, you guys are funny. So, and that is it. That's what I share with you guys. Christianity should have never have worked, ladies and gentlemen. It should never have worked. Because women, because of the crucifixion, right? Because it was new, because it turned everything on its head, because of the cross. None of these things, the very things that we discussed, should have completely collapsed Christianity. But yet, here we are, 2022, speaking about how amazing Jesus is and how powerful the gospel is. Right? So I just want to encourage you guys with this. Like, it should have never have worked. It had everything against it, but it prevailed and it's still here. And you're still here. And more people are hearing the gospel and turning their lives over to Christ. Even though it comes from very impossible places. Right? So that's it, guys. I just wanted to share that with you. And I will holler at you guys soon. All right. So with that being said, I am out. Peace.